Okay, folks, I see that we are live for our second half of Quantum Leap with, we have a special guest, Aaron Gobler today, who is a website expert and actually has a programming background. He recently started his own radio station as well. He's a member of the Albany Rotary Club. He's the one who got me interested in Rotary. So we have a lot to talk about. I just wanted to have my esteemed co-host Cory introduce himself. He's down in the beautiful San Diego area for this week.
Hey everyone, Cory and I here, business coach with Take Wing Coaching, and visiting San Diego this week, getting a vacation. It's been a while, like for most people, that we haven't been able to get out. So nice to do so and be near the beach and see the zoo and SeaWorld with our 2-year-old. And it's an interesting trip.
Yeah, great to hear. I just feel that sunshine on me just thinking about it. You guys have known each other for longer than I've known you. Cory, do you mind just telling us how you and Aaron met and know each other?
I don't know Aaron. No, just kidding.
Who is this guy?
Who is this Cory you speak of?
As a BNI director, I've been involved with the Oakland chapters for a very long time. So, and I probably met Lisa before I met Aaron, Aaron's wife, Lisa Kane. But along the way, Aaron and I have met. And one thing, as you mentioned, he is a programmer. My background in software development, it really helps me to know other programmers, especially on websites, because not all website developers do that, or they outsource it to India or to people that are maybe a little more suspect. So Aaron is kind of always in my back pocket as my go-to for certain kinds of development on websites. And so that's how I know him. Plus, we're in the same BNI chapter together now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. He does have the benefit of him and Lisa are a great power team too. Lisa's really a marketing wizard, and Aaron, does a lot of great things with the marketing of websites, which we're going to get into. He's just a very unique take on websites, I would say, as we see the kind of the standard of excellence that he brings. But I did want to get to Aaron and let him introduce himself and tell us about you and your story, Aaron.
So my company is PagePoint. If we want to go really far back, I say I was born in a small log cabin. No. So my story goes back to when I was 12 and I met my first computer and I fell in love with the computer. And I was then living at Radio Shack. By the time I was 15, I was living at a Radio Shack on their TRS-80 computer, and I just my love of programming. Just my whole life was, besides being just an average kid, was just always wanting to be programming, and knew that was what my my line of work was going to be. And when I discovered the web in 1994, I decided that I had to pursue working on the in that realm. It's actually, I registered the domain name PagePoint.com almost exactly 25 years ago. So it's kind of freaky to realize that it's been that long a time since since this whole kind of era began. And our company went to about 7 employees at one point, and now back since 2010, it's been just primarily me. And so I'm enjoying being a solopreneur. So having that freedom to choose the jobs that I want to take on, and to experiment in certain areas, and to that's kind of a real quick snapshot of how I got here.
Great. I know we've talked a little bit about this, about any changes you've noticed or how your experience has been in business during COVID. Correct me if I'm wrong, that it seemed like right when COVID hit, some folks said, well, I better get my online presence stepped up a bit with websites. But, that if you don't mind just giving us your insights there.
Sure. So just in terms of how COVID impacted me, just in how I run, how I do business, I've already been working from home, and I already have been communicating a lot with people with clients by phone or Zoom, and meeting them in person was actually just a small portion. So it really didn't impact my day to day very much. But like a number of people will ask me like, well, when the shelter in place, occurred back in March of last year, did like everybody come out of the woodwork and say, I better get a website because everybody's going to be online? And I thought that was going to happen too, but actually the bulk of the extra work that I got starting in March was clients like contractors that I already had, like building contractors who couldn't actually do any of their work for, they couldn't have any job sites operating for weeks. And so they suddenly had time to dedicate it to their, to addressing their, what they needed on their websites. So I was getting a lot of people coming to me just to use the time they had on their hands now to address things that they've been putting off for a while. And there was a lot of that. And also, just as president of my BNI chapter at the time, I helped the group transition to Zoom meetings, and I also assisted my Rotary Club in transitioning to Zoom meetings. So.
Great. And I've seen this in some of your work, and I'd like to take a look at that in a second. But really, the way you set up sites, I think, is very strategic in that it's not just kind of a, let's just put up a site. It's actually thinking through, what the goals of that site are, and you set it up in this very thoughtful way that you really see your kind of systematic and your kind of programming background in that as well. And I know Cory actually has a kind of a tech background as well, but if you don't mind just sharing us some of your examples of your work and kind of how you approach websites.
Sure. Well, before I'll show you, I have three that I can show you, and just kind of dovetailing off what you were saying, and also mentioning Lisa Kane, who's my wife, who's has a doctorate in marketing. She's a marketing consultant, and she, over the years, just being in meetings with her, because for a while she was working with, she was part of PagePoint. I just gained a lot of insight into how clients should approach website, how they should approach creating a website that will bring them the audience that they want. That some clients would come to our first meeting with an idea in their mind as to what they wanted to put on the website, but leave the meeting realizing that they needed to frame or present the website a much different way in order to get ultimately people want to get clients in business and convert, to business. So often the client would leave the meeting and say, wow, this is not what I expected. I really thought we were going to do it this way, but now I understand that building a site in this particular fashion will bring the right audience and convert the business. So I kind of took all that to heart, and that I use that in my discussions with clients. So I have that background from being around Lisa and talking with her and hearing her talk with clients, and I'm able to use that in working with my clients and trying to help direct them into a good direction. And then I'll just say one other thing is that often, and this is how websites first began, kind of as brochureware, that the website was, here's my company as I see it. Here is where we're located. Here's our information. It's basically like a very flat, dry brochure. And it wasn't couched in a way of like what necessarily either the public who's visiting the site was actually coming in to learn about. But also, people were not the company built the company we were building the website for. They were not making clear what they wanted the client to do. So it's very important when you have a website to give calls to action and say, this is what we want you to do. So that was another thing to consider. So with that, I'll share my. So there are three sites I'm going to show, and this is one that I completed recently, and it's for the Black Leadership Council. And this is an organization that's a kind of a branch of a San Francisco-based organization called PRC, and this is kind of a policy outreach plan, they have what they call the Black Prosperity Agenda. So there's not a lot of content on the site. There's only a few pages, but it is one of the more recent sites we've developed. And in this case, this site follows an idea of just a series of horizontal sections, and not really a lot of sites you'll see will have lots of different boxes across the screen. It's a very simple kind of layout. And of course, it has this call to action, donate now. And that takes you out to a place where you would donate. What did you have, David, do you have any particular, or Cory, any particular questions about this particular site?
I just wanted to point out a couple of things that I see with this site, which I think, speaks to your strategy that you bring. It's just a beautiful site, and it's like, simpler is better. You have that beautiful banner across the top that, you can't create a website like this on Wix or something by yourself. It's really this kind of standard of excellence that I see with this site, just really gives that professional approach to your organization, really just, by having a professional do your site. And if I've seen a lot of websites, but you're not going to get this kind of standard of excellence unless you go with somebody like Aaron, who's very rare out there in terms of the people who do websites. So let's go ahead and go to the next site.
Okay, I do want to give a quick shout out to I was working with a BNI member, another chapter on this, that she actually brought this work to me. So, and just a little plug for BNI, that I wouldn't have had this particular project if it weren't for another BNI member referring this business to me. So this next screen, this is just a work in progress, and that I was building a website for our BNI chapter, and that this is kind of perfunctory homepage right now. Really, the showpiece that I have is the member directory. And that is the business need here was that the website service that was provided by the regional BNI was very perfunctory, but a little bit hard to kind of personalize in a way where we could highlight everybody in this kind of fashion, where you see all of the members. And you can, I'll go use mine because it has all the fields filled in here, where it was able to have your photo and your contact information all in one place, your bio, some testimonials, and then of course I've got the ripple effect here. Thank you, David and Erica. And you can also filter. So if the public is coming in here and looking for an insurance professional, they can just filter and see the insurance professionals in our chapter, or they're looking for, you get the idea. So very clean, clear way of learning about different people in the chapter, seeing their faces, seeing their videos, etc.
Yeah, and I would just say this is a big improvement over the standard BNI stock site, which, as much as I love so much of what BNI has, I think this website is, strategically speaking, so much more user-friendly and kind of, accomplishing those goals that you really kind of thought through and then you implemented your vision. I just really see that in this site.
And because this is my own coding, my own program that does this directory, if we decide that we want to add other kinds of elements, to the individual bio pages, that's something that I can just add on. So it's very flexible in that regard, because I'm the one who wrote the programming. We're not having to figure out someone else's system.
Yeah, and for somebody who's actually, I've went through a number of website iterations. It's so important to get started on the right foot in that thinking, not only where you are now, but where you want to take your site or your business. And that'll, otherwise you could end up having to completely redo the website if you want to add some type of feature that won't be allowed in the way you set it up. And I love how you really conceptualize all that to really go kind of, well, where are you going with this? So you set up a site that you can really grow with your business.
Yeah. And I've actually used this directory. This is actually, this software that you see here is actually something I've already used for several clients. So I've been able to reuse it and adapt it really for different organizations like this. And perhaps maybe other BNI chapters at some point, I could use this for them as well.
Excellent. And did you have one more you wanted to show us?
Sure. So this shouldn't take very much time because there's not a whole lot to view here, and more than just to say that I have a radio show that I created as sort of a hobby, and so I needed a place to highlight the different episodes, and so the site is basically just this homepage with players on the left-hand side. And if you if you drill into any one of these particular episodes, then you'll get a page which again has the player in it, and then episode notes and a playlist and a mailing list sign up and other kinds of notes about that episode. So that's really this site. It's really just the homepage and these episode pages. So it's but I did use like a pre-made template that was made for disc jockeys, and I kind of just retrofitted it a little bit for a radio show, but I thought it was very dynamic in terms of the colors, and I try to reuse those colors throughout other parts of the site.
Yeah, and I just really appreciate your eye for good design too, that you found this really top template, and simpler is better. If you're going to have a radio show, this looks great to me. There's not that many people who do websites who could go out there and create something like this. So I just think you really have an ability to kind of customize it in a way that is optimized for what the use is and what the goals are. And with that, I'm going to actually turn it over to Cory.
Yeah, Aaron, tell us a little bit about your radio show and what got you started and what is it about?
Well, I'll tell you quickly what kind of spurred me into like, why do I want to even do this? So I've been a huge music lover for my whole life. And when I was a little kid, I had a little radio station in my parents' basement. And I figured out that I could use the tape recorder to like amplify these as an amplifier. And I made a little switching board with the Radio Shack switches. And my dad wired a speaker up to the kitchen. So my whole listenership was my mother. So I've always had that in my blood, that wanting to do kind of a radio thing. And I was listening to Apple Music radio stations, and I was listening to a Huey Lewis 80s station, and I'm like, hey, I could do this. This is fun. I could do that. So that started me in the mindset of like, let's try this out. And then I realized I couldn't just have people listen to music that's been, copyrighted, licensed and such. So I did some research and found out that I could pay for a license through BMI and ASCAP, which are the two biggest performance rights organizations. And so I basically can play any song from their repertories on the station. So that was a hurdle I had. Once I realized I could do that, that really made it easier legally for me to do this. And so it's helped me like learn how to use, what kind of microphone to have, and different kind of sound baffling, and using GarageBand. And so it's been great because it's something I can do at my own pace. So I want to try to do an episode a week, but that's not happening all the time.
Have you found any business use for it?
So, I haven't actually tried to I have to monetize it or find a business use particularly, but what I do find is these little side projects. I learn things like what's involved in licensing music, or where do I put a podcast? Like already one of Lisa's clients needed a podcast platform, and I was able to recommend one that I was using, and I was familiar how to use it already. So it's like it's preparing me in some way for questions that have come up in the future for people. And so it certainly keeps in line with my interests. And I'm learning different techniques and different things, like I said, licensing the music and such. Plus, people who visit the radio station will see the website. So I'm bringing people to that. But no, I haven't actually purposefully integrated it into my business plan. But I also have a habit of just like working on client projects or programming after dinner or something, or in the evening with my hobby-ish time when I would do my business. And now I'm actually doing other kinds of things, and it's actually making my mind, I'm more of a happy camper, I think, because I'm actually doing a real like hobby type thing in the evening and not just constantly doing work. So
Cool. And so who would you say is your ideal client?
just in general, just for my business, my best client is a small or medium-sized business with one or two decision makers, because it just works. From experience, just works out best. And somebody who has an existing website and needs it updated or doesn't. I do all my development work in WordPress, so it would need to be somebody who would be okay or happy with me to do the site in WordPress. But I have converted people's sites from other platforms into WordPress, or I update WordPress sites, develop brand new ones. Most fun I have is actually adding custom features, because it allows me to use my programming. I have more fun doing that kind of custom stuff than just building with the regular Lego blocks per se, or like making my own custom blocks.
I see that as the big thing too. If you don't use WordPress, you get locked into one of those other subscription services. That may be fine if you just want a real basic site, but if you want to do some unique and special things, you really have to have it in WordPress. And I've set up WordPress sites myself. I'm pretty tech savvy, but I don't think most people could do it on themselves. And it definitely wouldn't look the way that you make it look. I had my site look nothing like how you did it. So I think from doing it myself, I think, it really pays to have a professional like you with your knowledge of, the strategy that goes into it. And Cory, did you have any kind of debrief on that as well? And I know you haven't tried to set up your own site, have you, Cory? Or
Oh, many times. And yeah, no, I have a programming background, and I've done websites for people. And as I said, yeah, I think it does take certain skill to set up websites. I agree. I keep mine kind of limited, or I follow template models, which will look similar to what Aaron has set up, though usually not without as much creativity, I guess you could say. But maybe my clients don't care so much about that. But what's my point? The point is, I work in kind of an area of programming that many others don't. And so what happens is people come to me and they say, "Can you do this?" And I'm like, "No, it's not really my area." So I send them to people like Aaron, because I trust that they'll do a good job. And especially when they want something that's different than normal. They wanted to do something. They want that kind of filtering that he showed earlier. They want, there's plenty of systems that'll do donations and things, but they're oftentimes very generic and they're hard to figure out. And so people say, I want something that's really customized to our business. And that's where I think Aaron also really shines, is as a programmer, which there's not as many website programmers out there as you might think. They may call themselves programmers, but they're not. And so, Aaron has that kind of dual role. And I definitely would even send him most websites that came my way. It's not something I do.
Yeah, I really value Aaron's work ethic as well, that he kind of does what he says he'll do and he gets things done. I think a lot of times people get hung up with websites and they don't get done, or you get something back and it's, half done. That's why I don't, do them for my business too, because it's easy to get kind of stuck. So I think it's good to.
We talked about procrastination earlier, and people in the software and web development industry, it's a big problem. How many times have I heard my web designer disappeared on me, or my programmer disappeared on me? There's a lot of reasons for it. I won't get into it, but it is good to have somebody who will, deliver on time. And so that's another rarity that Aaron brings to the table.
Great. Yeah, I know would love to have Lisa back either on this show or on my new industry leader. That's Aaron's wife, who's such a wealth of knowledge, a PhD in marketing, which he's learned a lot from, it sounds like, and we all have. She's just an amazing marketer. With that, if Cory has any closing comments, let me know. Otherwise, I am going to close out Quantum Leap for the day. So we're going to get back to work, so to speak.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both
David.
for this opportunity.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And with that, thanks for joining us for Quantum Leap. And thanks, Aaron, so much for coming on.
My pleasure.